Okay, I'd like to welcome you to the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority meeting, August the 12th. It's a little after 2 o'clock. Doing a roll call. Please let the notes show that on the Oregon side, Mike Fox, Arthur Babbitts, Grant Polson, Catherine Thomas is in attendance. On the Washington side, Jake Anderson is calling in from Alaska. Marla Keither is in the room. Eric Wilson is in the room. And did we get anybody else?
Yeah, Ben.
Ben's on. Okay, and Ben Berger is on. So
He's there somewhere.
Thank you. Okay, so let's call to order. Is there any modifications, additions to the agenda? I see none. So do we need a motion to approve the agenda as is?
Approve the agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Catherine said okay. Is there any corrections to the minutes from the July 8th meeting? And if not, could I have a motion?
I would move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, and Catherine, you've got okay as well.
Sir, I'm not voting because I'm an alternate and it
Yeah,
looked
you're
like,
right.
okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
I thought it.
Yep, just making sure.
Good catch. Okay, public comment. Anybody from the public would like to make any comments? I don't see any signed in, but is there anybody on the phone or on the video? I see no hands up. Okay, so we'll close that out. Executive reports. The co-chairs, Jake, you have anything to say about your trip?
Yeah, I went to McCarthy and they've got a bridge that goes across a very small river. And if you want to cross it one time, it's $250 to go across the bridge. It's privately owned. Or if you're a local and you live there, you can buy a year-long easement, and that's $600 a year to go across the bridge. So just kind of puts things into perspective in terms of prices.
And when I look at your bridge or that particular bridge, I see no pedestrian or bicycle lanes. And it looks like it's probably not seismically qualified.
So there is a pedestrian bridge. It's just over like a quarter mile away, and it is free to walk across though.
Cool. Let's go to the project director.
All right, so we continue to move through our submittals with Kiewit. They've been on schedule with their deliverables. We've been going through comment resolutions as the deliverables come in. August, we have a couple big packages. The biggest one really is the design and construction criteria package. That will set the criteria that we'll move forward with through the base design and through the rest of the project. So that's a pretty big submittal there that's coming in. The teams continue to have our task force meetings every other week on Tuesdays. A lot of things are worked out in those meetings. But when we need comment resolution meetings for specific groups, we're doing those offline and trying to handle them through kind of an over the shoulder specific task meetings. Communications, I'll leave that for the communications updates. We will not be doing one, so let me give you just a briefing. They are working through their upcoming communications plan, getting things out. As you'll see recently, they put something out about the utility meeting that we had. So we had all the local utility companies on the Washington and Oregon side come out. There's probably 20 people on each side that came out and looked at the utilities, looked at the impacts the project's going to have, talked to our teams about, what their expectations and needs were, and just some coordination. So it was a big event to get the coordination out here, get those entities out here to see the project. It's a big deal actually to have them come out, because they usually will not do that unless they feel that the project is real. So it was a good indication that the utility companies are starting to recognize the project has got momentum to move forward. So thought it was a great event to be able to kick that off and get those meetings started. So
I sat through both of them, and I'll tell you, the communication was good and the cooperation was outstanding. Everybody played well together, and we had some good discussions with the WashDOT as far as various areas over on the other side, on the Washington side. And we had some great discussions on the natural gas piping operation, interconnecting piping and so on, and how to potentially minimize the amount of relocations we have to do on those pipelines. So it was a good series of meetings. And again, it shows, I think, the public that this is a real project and we're doing it in the right sequence. So often I see other projects that aren't really organized right. They do this always late in the game, and now you're playing catch up. First pass. So early days, but at least we're starting out in the right direction, I think.
So some other key things for communications is they're working on a tolling page where we're going to have basically all things tolling, which I think will be good for the public and us to be able to communicate to them, as well as another live event, August 28th with Kiewit, where we'll have a contractor in front of the public answering questions. And then we're looking at an open house in September on the bike ped to have a open discussion with the public to start talking about what that typical section will look like for
When did you say that was?
bike ped. It's in September. We have not scheduled a date yet. Mid to late September, I think is what we're looking for. The tabling events continue. I was able to attend the farmers market last week and white salmon, so decent turnout, and people were still asking questions. I think people are getting more and more used to the project. It's good. They're, recognizing the website or saying they've already are on the email list, but I think we did pick up another 10 or 12 people that had not signed up. So we did have one gentleman who talked to us about the potential of putting solar panels as a canopy over the bridge or over the walkway, which I thought was an interesting piece. We talked about the potential of if there was any types of grant funding that could be captured to pay for something like that. He wasn't aware of anything, but I thought it was, maybe a future activity or something to think about down the road.
ODOE has one.
What's that?
ODOE has one.
So previously there've been concerns that either solar or wind would not be compatible with the visual subordination
Yeah.
of the scenic area.
That was one thing we talked about too, was what that would look like if we had something like that on the bridge. So, but the public's at least looking at it as something coming and not something that's still a dream, right? I mean, that's a big shift, I think, in what we hear the public saying related to that. Government relations, we now have Dan Marr as a sub under the HTTB contract for strategic communications. So he has been jumping in with both feet, meeting with the lobbyists, both Oregon, Washington, and the DC folks, just getting his hands around the GR plan, getting that kind of packaged. I think he'll be a good addition once he fully gets kind of up to speed, but has been a big part of the team already and getting that coordinated. We do have an upcoming trip to DC, September 9th to the 11th. We do need to finalize who's going to that. I think right now, I think it's Mayor Kiesler, Commissioner Anderson, and Commissioner Fox. So we just need to finalize that, make sure who's going so we can start getting stuff scheduled. Rooms and things like that. Summit is working on meetings. We'll meet with the legislative folks. The big reason for going this time is a thank you for the infra grant. So we'll cover that as well as some other, briefing topics on the project and general project update. But it should be a good event. And then we're looking at probably a second event sometime late November, December, to go back and have some discussions around the BIP and the upcoming grant cycles for next year. September 13th, in the Dalles, this is a Oregon Joint Transportation Committee, roadshow. There's two parts to this. There's a roundtable section in the morning and then a public section in the evening. The roundtable section, Dan has been coordinating with the city of Hood River and the county of Hood River and who they're recommending to go. And then we will be submitting a letter for folks from the board to go. We need to finalize who that's going to be and who we're going to submit as people to go. We think one person from Oregon, one person from Washington, and then maybe someone for technical backup as, if there's a technical question about the bridge. But we need to figure out who the other two people are so we can get that letter in and get that request to them.
Right. I spoke with Dan about that, and concern is that their focus is on the maintenance issues.
Correct.
And we don't want to be too much in your face on this while we still want the presence. So I had offered to go, but he thought that Jennifer as our chair would make more sense.
Yeah, and then Arthur could go if the group wanted. Arthur could be our requested person from the Oregon side. Whoever we want to put up there.
I'm available. We can figure this out.
Arthur, do you know how they're going to run that panel?
I don't. I just know that they have a very specific focus. It may be worth putting a call in to Susan McLean about this and asking her for her guidance on.
Thorn Run has been.
We don't want to overdo. Right. Oh, yeah, they've been doing that, right?
So Thorn Run's been coordinating this with McLean and coordinating the event. They've been getting us information related to the flow show for the roundtable because that is an invite only. And then for the public meeting in the afternoon. So we asked them this morning exactly, does everybody get 2 minutes? Does everybody get 5 minutes? Can you bring a handout? We're getting those details so that we can be prepared for the meeting. And then on the public side, we need to develop a list, and Dan's working on a list of who we would like to have come for the public comment period. That is first come, first serve, I'll call it. So it's as you sign up for the event. But what we really want to do is have people that come and talk more about how the bridge impacts them in whatever their role is, and not have a repetitive conversation about the same discussion, right? So we need to make sure we coordinate that as well. So it would be nice this week if we could finalize who's going and get the invites out to the public folks that we want to have come.
I think what would be helpful though, Mike, is how are we going to approach both the panel and the open public? Example being, if we don't want to talk about the new bridge and the need for it, can we talk about the old bridge is taking more and more and more maintenance, and we just had a bridge strike that shut it down for X number of days and then evenings for 2 weeks, even though it's not an ODOT bridge and it doesn't fall into ODOT maintenance, it's still a maintenance issue with local highway.
So it's not that we don't want to talk about the new bridge, it's that we want people to relate how the old bridge affects their life and how a new one will affect it, right? And do it from, I'll give you an example, if the hospital came. How does the old bridge affect the hospital functioning? How does the new bridge would improve the functions of that? So that there's that contrast, and it's different people's actually personal perspectives on it, so that they hear the different people. So that's why it's important for us to figure out who's going to go, so we can make sure that we talk to them about what they're going to, what they're going to say, what the message is going to be, that we're not duplicating messages and we're going in with kind of a coordinated. We don't want to overtake the meeting. We don't want to come in and be offensive to the group. So I think we need to be aware of that. But there's a good opportunity because everybody's affected, that everybody at least could spend a minute talking about how the bridge affects their stuff, along with maybe other things that they want to talk about. So, we want them to leave the meeting. Wow, everybody really is affected by this bridge. Was the general kind of theme we want them to have.
Yeah, I think Mike's approach was correct, that the bridge is, the potential loss of the bridge would be catastrophic to our community, and we're looking for ways to avoid that. We acknowledge and we recognize that the Oregon Transportation Commission has a huge lift that they're working on now to figure out how to fund ODOT's maintenance efforts into the future, and we are tremendously sympathetic and supportive of that, and we're not trying to distract from that. And by saying that, you can get your attention and still not be offensive in how you do it.
That's kind of you captured a bunch of those stories on how people were affected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, one of the videos that we have, when we thought that this was going to be an opportunity in Head River, there's a longer video that we kind of have at the ready. But definitely, I think those are some of the people that Dan's building a list for, some that we sat down with, and others that still shared stories maybe we didn't record. But we definitely have like a good array of people that can speak from the perspective of a worker and a business owner and a medical, response. And
How long of a video is it?
I think that final cut was just under 6 minutes, which to me is too long, candidly. But I think if we were to do the set like captive audience, then we could play it. But a 6-minute version is a pretty hard sell. I mean, most people are going to check out after the first 30 seconds of an online.
Do you think they'd let us show a 3 or 4 minute video?
I mean, I think there's no harm if we are allowed to do a handout to include through a QR, like a connection to that, or have that video be the one that we display on our website. I don't worry that in the future we'll have an opportunity where we can show that to a captive audience. And I do think that JLA was working with StoryGorge on like some social versions, like smaller snippets. So maybe to your point, like if we can get a snippet that's in that 30-second to a minute, and that can be the quick thing that we share. But I think if anything, that exercise gave us good leads on more community members that we hadn't yet heard from, and maybe we're hoping we can compel some of them to participate in that hearing.
What's the average TikTok, like 7 seconds?
Yeah.
12 seconds.
Yeah.
So from the Oregon side, I've met with the Joint Transportation Committee many times.
Right.
I think it would be helpful if we had some different faces in there from Oregon. So I don't know if
I'm already.
I'm available, and I have spoken with them before also, but I am available. I was going to basically sit back and let Dan work with JLA and figure this out. And
I'm gonna have him put you down as the Oregon person. Who do we want to put up for the Washington side?
Can we for sure have a Washington person there?
No, the way we're gonna write the letter is that, because it's so integral to both sides, we would like to have two, but if we're only allowed to have one, it would be Oregon. But we're gonna make the request for two.
I mean, I feel like Doug would be a strong voice just from that perspective of like critical industry and economic driver. But I think a lot of it's probably just pending availability between like the Oregon side, like which commissioners are able. I mean, I would be confident with any of our Washington commissioners going. So I think.
So you want us to just reach out to see who's available on that day?
Yeah.
Start with Doug and then go from there. It's the 13th, and that would be.
I think all of them would be great to support. I know Eric's been sitting through all of the ENC, so he knows the bridge inside and out, and up and down and in the water and out of the water.
Yeah. All right, good. We'll move forward with those.
There's another one, right? The next 4 weeks. Are you going to talk about?
Yeah. So next on the list is the Oregon and Washington lobbyists are starting to, they actually started today scheduling meetings, anticipating them to be virtual and in person as much as possible. On the Washington side, it'll be with the candidates that made it out of the primary. On the Oregon side, it'll be kind of both things. On the Washington side, it'll be mostly District 14 and 17. We think there's about 10 visits on the Oregon side, Washington side, 12, I think she said, on the Oregon side, so over 20 meetings. So we need to know who, and we don't have dates, we're working on getting them, but it's gonna be a little fast and furious over the next 3 weeks. So if you could send Dan your availability over the next 3 weeks, like, hey, this date I'm free all day, or evenings on these dates work, or whatever, you can send them. So that as they schedule them, we'll be somewhat stuck to whatever the legislature's availability is. So
Are these here or in Salem?
part of them will be in Salem, part of them could be in Olympia, part of them could be virtual, or it depends on what the legislative folks are available to do.
It would,
Um,
I have a kind of a strong opinion. If you can do it in person, that's better, because some of these people were brand new. This is the first time they've heard about a bridge. So more in person would be, I think, better.
And I would think those would be local here. Wouldn't we be asking those candidates to come? No one will be in Olympia.
Right, candidate's not gonna be in capital.
They're gonna be
They'll be
either
wherever their
Yakima
local
or
place is.
west of
Yeah,
Vancouver.
so do we want to ask them to travel with us, or do we want to travel with them?
I mean, I'm kind of with Mike. I think offering up both options. So we make it clear that we're open to in-person meetings, but certainly like understanding if, the only way we can get them to connect. But I'd like to believe that a handful of them would prioritize being able to come and.
Yeah,
meet
so campaigning
with-
here
yeah.
anyway. We can
Yeah.
always work into campaign trip.
Yeah.
We can do that. And then the other question is, how do you all feel about having a consistent group that does it versus mixing it up? And who's available? Does that cause anybody?
I mean, I think it's gonna be such a crapshoot of just the scheduling that we're probably better served to open it up to all the commissioners that are willing and able. And then I think it's just making sure that any of the commissioners that are scheduled feel supported if they, we need to go revisit the FAQs again, or just work with Brad and the Thorn Run team for those respective meetings to have that short bullet list of like, here's the key points we want the commissioners to emphasize. But I think in the past, when we've had at least one from each state and sometimes 3 total, it's a nice way to balance each other, and someone can speak to the technical side, someone can take the social, human community focus, someone can take the whole funding, lift picture.
So the goal.
I agree. The other thing it shows, Marley, is that we've got buy-in from both sides of the state.
Yeah.
Washington and Oregon are both in this together. If you're
Yeah.
talking to somebody from Washington.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a good balance among all 12 of us of just different life stages and rural communities.
I also think you're probably looking at 2 different types of packages. If you're meeting with somebody that we've already met with several times, that's a different package. It's kind of a status of where we are.
Yeah.
If you've got a brand new candidate, then I think it's more of a, hey, here's what this project is.
Yeah.
And where we are and what we're trying to do.
Yeah, some of those candidates, it's going to be a true one-on-one.
Completely new.
And then, some of them that have already been involved on both sides of the state with the project, I think it's more just the check-in and also acknowledgement of all the work they've done in partnership with us.
So as these start to get set up, we will try to coordinate a minimum of 3 people and try to get representation from both sides as best we can. And then we will just reach out as they get set up and say, hey, it's available. Get it set up, get people briefed, and then do it that way if that's okay. Because it'll be a flurry to get all 20 of them covered. So.
Marley, you brought up the different skill sets, and I think that's been really, I feel like I've been kind of watching that from the edge, but I think it's really amazing the different skill sets that we've brought together, and watching, Jake with some of the GIS stuff, and he was able to jump in.
Yeah.
Catherine's jumping in on some of the environmental stuff, and Grant with the finance stuff. And I think also Arthur has got this historic background and knows all the individuals and key places. I think that's a strong story about reaching out into the community to find those different skill sets.
I'd like to say that the county thought that through carefully when we selected these folks, but.
Stop there.
So I'd like to say that.
And so that's what I'm gonna say.
All right, so those are the major things coming up. We will have probably a one-on-one or a more general session, both on the Oregon and Washington side. Said that right, sorry, my brain got confused with what's coming out. We will, I don't know that we're gonna be able to do a joint session, dates aren't lining up to be able to do something joint wise, so it's probably gonna be centered around each one of them. But as that gets kind of developed, we'll get out with everyone, so those are two other things that we're gonna do this fall as well, so. And then probably another trip to DC, I think I said that in late November, December. So.
I had a question, sorry if I'm out of it, but looking at your updates, the VIP grant that was resubmitted, did we change like the ask in that?
Oh,
Oh,
well,
I'm
those are
jumping
just a
in.
second, sorry.
Okay.
So the Washington funding, is, we're working with WashDOT on that. I wasn't able to get an update from Robert. I did talk to him last week. It's gotten through their headquarters and legal review, so he's finishing it up. So I'm anticipating we'll get that this week finalized for the additional 10 million of the 15 million. There was a little bit of a delay. Washington and Oregon at the governor's level were coordinating to make sure that we met the intent of the match money from Oregon to Washington, so they checked that box and we're okay with it. So we should see that, I'm hoping, this week come through on that agreement. So
And how quick can we draw down on that? Because I know we're squeaky tight next month, right?
it should be pretty much immediate, because it will just be an amendment to the agreement that we already have. So there's no new funding, and
Our finance guy is very quiet and reserved.
I feel like these spaces have gift potentials.
and WashDOT signs it, they've already got the money allocated. It's the agreement is what eventually would bill against it.
I guess the question is,
Immediately.
do we have any short-term cash flow issues that
Yes.
you are concerned about?
Always. Endlessly concerned.
Anything that you bring to our attention? Knowing that we hate to be disturbed by these things, if we don't have to be.
We're gonna cover all of that this meeting, or we're gonna do that next.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think we should cover it now.
Yeah, sure.
We need the
Go
Washington
for
money, so we run short in September without the Washington money.
Right, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yes.
Yep.
We are at red
Right,
without the Washington money for September.
and by how much?
$1 million.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's critical that we
And did
get
we,
the,
and that includes the potential port and county monies?
if we would get the county money this month, we could start billing against it. If it has access to actually bill against it.
So yeah, we haven't counted.
We haven't got that. That is going to be used, January, February is when we're thinking that we'll need that money, as
Yep.
well as the Oregon Transportation Infrastructure Bank loan.
Right,
That's what gets us through 2025 until we get the Oregon bond money and the infra grant.
okay,
So come next June, we will be back to where we are right now with needing to either have access to infra or the Oregon $20 million.
got it.
So that's the next pinch. And then once we get through that pinch, then we're in pretty decent shape after that. But the next pinch will be, so we will be cash flow constrained and through June of next year. Yeah.
But the major pinch is being September of this year and June of next year.
Late next year, yeah.
Yep, until we finish up the paperwork for our debt finance.
Yes. So, all right, that covers the local funding, grant agreements. The bridge investment program, you're very aware we did not hit that. We did resubmit our application on August the 1st. We have requested a debrief, on that application. Once we get that debrief, then we will find out when we can do an update to our plan, or to our application. There will be a window where they will allow us to do an update. We don't know the date of that yet. It will depend on kind of the timing of how the VIP goes. We think that'll be sometime between now and November, is the best guess, but as you know, these grant things are very flexible, so. But that's the plan for the VIP grant, is to reapply, which we've already done, and then debrief and then update them with any updated information that we have.
Everybody knows that the foundations on our bridge are gonna have to be deeper, right? No big surprise, deeper than what we had on 520.
Okay.
The other thing that has happened is that we had the Baltimore bridge strike, which has caused us to increase criteria for seismic / bridge strike on the foundation.
Isn't there also the concerns about needing to be more sensitive to the to disturbing the current bridge?
Yes, absolutely. The next thing that we all know, we changed from concrete, poured in place concrete to steel. That should be a good news change. By going to steel, that should help us with the number of piers in the water.
Right.
Reducing piers is also a good thing on several different fronts, one being cost. And then the big one is inflation. If you remember, we had 4% in the estimate. Indications are construction is not been 4%. So Kiewit and KMC is doing an update to the estimate later this fall, but we're going to get a preview of that early enough that we can do an adjustment in this BIP grant and try and take care of that as early as we can. That's the news.
There's some chance for some good news over the next year or two on the inflation front, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Hope so.
Yeah, you want to adjust to what it is.
Yeah.
You also want to recognize that, we did the planning, their initial planning on the upslope, and now we're making a revision, hopefully on the downslope.
We want to be, I think we want to be in the 50-50 range.
Yep.
50% probability of overrunning it, 50% probability of underrunning it.
Right.
That's kind of the sweet spot.
And then we'll see if the construction trends. They're just not consistent with anything right now. Nationally. Construction pricing is coming in at just
Crazy numbers.
Right, there's
unpredictable numbers.
There is a lot of money that has been flushed into infrastructure, and that means that there's a lot of demand.
Yep.
And so it's not a surprise that it's hard to find construction workers, it's hard to find engineers, it's hard to find companies.
Yep. That's why I think it's imperative that once we go fast and get it done as quick as we can. That's going to be the cheapest way you can get this project
This is
done.
where the switch to steel helps out.
Yes. So, all right, any other on the VIP? The raise grant, we got, an update from FHWA. They're anticipating that will be completed in August. There's 2 more layers of review in, DC, that they need to go through their chief counsel office and then the, secretary's office for final approval. So they're anticipating 6 to 8 weeks around the end of August at the earliest for our raise grant.
And this is Secretary of Transportation, right? This is, raise goes to this is transportation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then infra, we are working with FHWA on our infra grant agreement. One of the key elements of that is working with them on phased funding, I think we're calling it, where we will get funding out of the infra grant for the design portion and then funding for the construction portion so that we can continue with the design up until we get to construction.
So Mike, if you remember, right about that time, we got, I'm going to call it 2 earmark bills,
Yep.
4 million each.
Yep.
And one of them was tagged for relocation costs, right-of-way costs, and that kind of thing.
Yep.
And we were awarded that. Where are we in our ability to tap into that?
So those 2 have been or are going to be rolled into our infra grant. So instead of getting 200 million in infra, we're going to get 208.
Oh, that's
but-
roll CDS over into,
Well, kind of.
because we don't have isn't it different administration requirements in the CDS?
So
budget?
it's going to come through the infra process, but they will still hold some of the tracking and the management that they would have had under CDS. So like the matching and the reporting will be separate. But they will come through the infra and we honestly don't know exactly, and we're working with the feds. I think they're still trying to understand exactly how they're going to do that. But that's the plan right now, is that it will come through infra and come with our infra agreement.
So my
Which is
point-
good and bad, right? Because it won't have to go through the local process of multiple steps to get here and then multiple steps of reporting. So administratively, I think it'll actually be a little cleaner.
Just do all the administration up front.
So one reason for this, especially the 4 million for right of ways and stuff. We could be using that money right after the ROD, right? Which is early 25.
Well, either way, they would have had to go through an agreement process. But I think this agreement process will actually be quicker than the administrative CDS agreement process.
Okay, but when we're talking to them of the 208, when you're looking at the distribution of that, we need to make sure some of that money is coming way forward in 25 as early as we can get.
Yep, so we've broken out and have communicated to them what money we need during what years and for what activities. So along with design, it would be any early activities that are allowed to go pre-construction, which could be your mitigation, your right of way, those elements that you can do pre-construction. So that's how we've divided that up, and we're working with them on to be able to separate the infra into two basically allocations of money, where they'll allocate a preset of money until you get complete construction. And when I say that, we're also defining what that means, because everybody says we can't start construction till you're fully funded. I want a checklist of what that means. So I'm working with, I sent HRWSBA a question on that, as well as internally, we're checking the boxes of what we think that means, because there are certain things that you'll have to have before you can start construction. They thought, like I said, full funding. If it's packages and you phase the project, it has to be what they call independent utility. So exactly what does that mean?
Well, it probably means that you can't say that we're fully funded for half the bridge.
Correct. That would be, yes.
It's not even usable.
What comes into play there is the progressive design build contract type.
Right.
That if you're going to wait until you have all the funding for all of the packages, there's no advantage to going progressive design build.
Well, you can be fully funded. There's independent utility to the design phase, right?
Yes, correct.
Right. But I think what it means is if you've got a construction package in one, before you can go with one, you have to have all the funding for one.
No, I understand what you're saying, but it seems like, this is the reason that people always lowball the estimates, so that they can say they're fully funded and then they come back and say, oh, I guess we need more now. It's like,
The fully funded is really only known when the bridge is open.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's why I want to know what that means.
So we have
to
no
everybody.
contingency, right?
So once we understand what that means and what everybody's expectation of that means, then we'll know how much money we really need to have in order to go to construction. Or how we can break the project up into packages so that we can go out with certain packages.
You brought up right of way acquisition a minute ago.
Right.
Why did you bring that up independently? What's?
Because you could do that prior to construction, right? So we could advance all the right of way acquisition, all the right of way funds, the mitigation activities that we have to do out of NEPA and the ROD.
Although
Those could be
MOA,
done early, so the MOAs with Stroud,
Right.
that all can be done.
Now,
early.
right of way acquisition, isn't that primarily from the port?
It's primarily, there's one private parcel on the Washington side, and then the rest of it is mostly local agencies.
What I'm thinking is, because it's local agencies, we might be able to, a flip side way of looking at it, that we're more likely to be able to ask to delay those payments.
If there is even payments, yes.
If there are payments.
Yes, correct.
we just want to check it off and, okay, this piece is done, let's keep moving.
Right.
So we're working on that definition, working on the definition of, when can we actually start construction? When could we start early construction activities? How are those going to be viewed? Can we separate, good example, can we separate the demo from the bridge, right? The demo is a separate utility that can be done as a separate phase. And then we could fully fund the first piece. and then use funding of the MSPs, right? So, you know, the Washington intersection is another one that could have independent utility. If it was built early. So there are maybe some smaller projects that we could do.
We could have a big fundraiser where people get sledgehammers and get to destroy the toll booth.
But you probably want to do it after the new one's open.
That's what I mean, yeah, after.
The insurance on that will be so expensive, though.
Oh, good point, Catherine, thank you.
Let's
So
keep going.
the Treaty Tribe MOAs, we had a pause on that because we needed to work through the description and the messaging to all the consulting parties because of the changes in design. So we have gotten back to where we have that project description and we're able to get that over to ODOT, over to FHWA. So I think the meetings with the tribes are going to start back up. That we've got one tomorrow, there's one next week. So I think those conversations are going to continue to go.
They know about the changes, right?
We know that has
Oh, they
been
don't.
what FHWA and ODOT have been wanting to do is they want to go once and get all of the discussion out and get a clear picture.
Sure, let everybody
so that
know
they
we're
can
reducing
explain
the in-water period, we're reducing the
Peers and there's,
et cetera, that this is a good thing from a fish point of view and.
yeah,
I'm excited about
so what we know through
Life flow, all that
Yeah,
stuff.
oh, yeah.
what we know through today, we've got that communicated, we've got that in the NEPA reevaluation, so they're able to communicate that back out, so we'll start that conversation again and get those going again. We're hopeful that by the end of the year, we can go through those. There is no guarantee of that schedule, but that's the plan, is to try to finish those by the end of the year.
And FHWA and ODOT are leading that kind of effort to
Yes.
take our revised.
Federal highways. is
Federal
leading the
highways to
effort.
lead.
Okay.
Yeah. But we're providing them updates, information, graphics, whatever they need, but they're leading the communications piece because of the government to government need for that, so.
Keep going.
All right, right away, we did have a pause the right away with the port. We got a conflict of interest letter from FHWA. We met with them last week. We are developing a conflict of interest policy. So Foster Darby is developing that. We will bring that back to the board for adoption after we go through and get FHWA's agreement that policy addresses their concerns. And then
Their concern is that we didn't have that policy.
the concern was we didn't have a policy and that there are perceived or real conflict of interest with this authority and other local agencies. And it goes to, well, part of it is Mike being a commissioner on both, part of it is Mayor Keithler being with the city of White Sand, and we have to buy property there. Jake being a commissioner on Hood River County, we have to do something there. So we're developing policy that's basically gonna say, if you sit on two seats, you're just gonna remove yourself from the voting.
Yeah, you can still
At least one.
be part of the discussion. You just can't vote on it.
So we'll
I'm
get
on
the-
alternates.
so
Yeah,
we'll
that's,
get a-
I have to say, that's,
yeah,
in
we're
classic
gonna-
conflict of interest, you're not allowed to participate in deliberations.
What
That may
the
not-
lawyer said, because this is not a true conflict of interest,
Right.
he had a different term to it. We could still be part of the discussion, but we have to recuse ourselves from voting.
If we want to get into the legal
Right.
piece, Mark can describe it better. It's more the perceived.
Yeah.
No, I understand all, I've been part of many discussions of that, but I think the point you just made, that we have plenty of alternates, we can avoid any conflict.
And that's what
If there's just really not an issue here, we can simply write something, whatever we write, we're gonna be able to avoid it, so.
And I offered with the lawyers that if this is a real issue, I got plenty of other stuff to think about.
Right.
You guys take care of the right of way.
Right.
With the port.
So I don't know, Mark, if you wanted to weigh in on any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had them satisfied at the end that a policy of recusal would work for them. I did want to clarify for the record that you do have a conflict of interest policy. You've just adopted it by reference. It's included in the bylaws. And it refers to the conflict of interest procedures set forth in the Oregon revised statutes.
Okay, let's keep going.
All right, so I want to make sure everybody's aware of that. Permitting is moving forward. We do, one of the big meetings next week, just so everybody's aware of, is the 6F coordination with the mitigation properties on the port. We have a meeting with HRWSBA, the Oregon Park and Rec Division, and National Park Service about how we're capturing and how we're impacting the 6F and potential areas that we're looking at for mitigation, and to just make sure that we're in step with them on what needs to happen there. So, just another piece that everybody should be aware of. And like I said, we're working through the NEPA. The last thing is that we're working through this NEPA reevaluation. That should be done by October. There's a number of steps that we need to do for that. But it looks like we'll get that done by the end of this year. And it shouldn't impact any of the scheduling that we were already planning on the project.
About review of the next network.
What is our realistic anticipation of?
There's no reason that Rod can't, right now, our schedule we have, and FHWA, ODOT have both seen it and agreed that by January, we should have the rod. Now that there's a lot of.
We've heard that story before.
That we don't have control over. The NEPA reevaluation, those technical things we have control over, and I think those will get done. I think, to me, the biggest outlier is going to be the treaty MOAs. Those just don't know. I think we've made good progress with one of the tribes. We're very close to signatures with them. What we've heard from the other tribes is that once one of them goes, that we'll start to see the other ones come along after that. So we're hopeful that that'll happen.
And the record of decision basically memorializes the MOAs, the biological opinion, all the basically NEPA requirements.
And that really that's one of the steps before you can go to construction, is getting there. That's one of those checklist items that we need to do. So we're gonna get everything that we have control over done, and then the ones that we don't have direct control over continue to meet.
And there's scheduled meetings now. Is it every 2 weeks, or I know it's at least every 2 weeks?
Every 2 weeks.
Does that include the Columbia, the scenic area?
That doesn't have to happen as part of NEPA. That is a separate permit, though, that we do need to get. Yes.
That's a standalone.
So the extension is more considered procedural, like the applicant, having to, I'll jump on way too far down the packet, but the component of having to submit for having gone past the initial
reevaluation.
Yes,
Yeah.
the reevaluation.
So the reevaluation now includes not only the time, but also these changes that we've introduced. So we had to repackage the reeval for the time extension and any changes that we've implemented.
And remember, the big changes is metal, steel.
Yeah.
And number of foundations and the roundabout.
And stormwater ponds and stuff.
Roundabout, how did the roundabout change?
It has not changed. There's potential of it going to.
Separating it?
No, of it being an intersection.
Okay.
But the traffic folks are getting more detail that says that actually a single lane with a bypass lane roundabout may actually be the best
And
solution.
it's far enough away from the pumping station that it's probably
Not going to impact the regulation stations down.
At some earlier point, there was discussion about whether the roundabout could be considered a separate project.
Correct. And
Is that still in
that
consideration?
needs a discussion with FHWA of whether that would have.
Okay,
Because in order for it to, it probably will have to tie to the existing bridge.
right.
And I'm not sure we can do that with the roundabout, where the location has to be to avoid
Yeah,
the
and,
regulatory.
and the other thing, once we do that, if we could separate them, and WashDOT does that one by themselves, we got a big coordination schedule problem, making sure that when our new bridge is ready to be accessed, there's something on the 14 to be able to access.
Right.
I don't think it'll be able to.
You don't have control. Given the sorts of weird detours I've seen in major urban areas, it's hard to believe that we couldn't come up with some way to temporarily hook things together that has utility until money is available to do it the right way,
Yeah,
right?
possibly. I mean, we'll make it work one way or another. But where that's landing over there, there's potentially a lot of fill you'd have to put in to be able to make it temporary access.
And the other thing that you're gonna have is where the new roundabout will be and where the existing bridge ties in today is where that gas line comes through. And most likely they will not let us fill.
So the best way is do it right the first time and get them all done at the same time.
Sure. Always. All right, that was all. Sorry, there's a lot
How
of.
about the review of the open items? Who's doing that?
Have anything else outside of that?
Build a
Okay.
bridge, isn't that the
Yeah.
open item?
Okay, legal review. Let's, Mark,
Yes.
do you have anything to update or who?
Judy?
Yeah, it's Judy. Hi, good afternoon again. I just have one item to update on. And the master contract with PDM Smith that was approved by the board at the June 10th meeting has been signed. The first task order is under negotiations, and CDM Smith has been given a limited notice to proceed with the TNR report. That's all I have.
And I sent out the legal report this morning. So
Do we have a schedule on their activities?
they are working on developing that. That will be given over to Drew and then put into maybe the main schedule.
Right, Angie.
They do have a sub schedule they're working from, but it's just high level milestone.
Okay, lobbyist report.
Never mind. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Dan, do you want to go first?
Sure. Good afternoon. Mike covered much of our activity, so I'll be brief on this. The one piece that we did not discuss, which is ongoing conversation or beginning the conversation with the Special Districts Association about tort liability. I have just received feedback from them that they're willing to meet this morning. They sent me a note back, willing to meet. So I'll be working on scheduling a conversation with Commissioner Babbitt, and I think it's Commissioner Anderson were the two that we're going to be a part of that conversation. So as soon as we can get those dates off to you, we'll try and get them scheduled in that conversation. The other note, and Mike made mention of it on the Washington funding, to the extent that you get a chance to engage both Representative Helfrich or the governor's team, both were active in reaching out to try and make sure that work on the language in the Oregon bill this last time was sufficient for what Washington needed. So there was good work there done. The governor's office called me multiple times on this. On top of that, the workflow that Mike went through is exactly the workflow we're looking through this fall, and appreciate everyone's willingness to do these meetings as we move forward. There really isn't, by way of update, there isn't much news in terms of the direction of a new transportation bill. What we chatted about in the past continues to be where the discussion is going. The Joint Transportation Committee is working through these different meetings around the state. The one in the Dalles is later in the schedule, so they are busy now. They will be busy next month and even into October as they finish that up. So that's the ongoing work of the committee, and we continue to profile the bridge and its importance. And I would affirm, just on the discussion that you were all having about the Dalles, I would affirm, while the desire not to overwhelm that conversation is absolutely spot on, I do not think we need to hesitate to talk about the need for the bridge, both from a safety perspective as well as just part of a system that we're taking care of. And so I would not try to crib your comments into the ODOT budget discussion. Let's talk about the bridge. Let's talk about its need. Let's talk about why it's about safety and the need to invest in it, and just be sensitive on how sort of dwarfing the conversation.
Good. Thank you, Dan. How about, I can't see Washington.
Brad's on.
Oh, there, Brad. Yeah, there's your phone.
Hey guys. Yeah, Mike covered a lot of the things that we are currently working on. I'll just update. We did have our state primaries last week. So at least the table is set for the folks that we're going to be working on, as mentioned earlier. I think we are also going to be doing some briefings with the new governor's policy person on transportation, as well as, now that the primary is over, trying to engage with the gubernatorial candidates and their staff. As you can expect, there's a lot of people moving around, a lot of different folks. So, who is going to be relevant to have conversations with, we're trying to figure that out. But some of those things are going to be getting scheduled here in the next weeks and months going forward. So beyond that, Mike covered most of the things that we're working on. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Brad? Thanks, Brad. And I'm looking for DC.
That'll be me this week, Mike.
Okay.
Jim and Jake are traveling today. So to start off, Congress is out of session for the remainder of the summer, or rather through Labor Day. While they're out of town, we are working to schedule meetings with the Oregon and Washington congressional delegation for when they return in early September. We are also working on scheduling meetings with the Build America Bureau and DOT while the delegation is in town. We also spoke with Secretary Pete Buttigieg's Deputy Chief of Staff and FHWA Administrator's Special Assistant about getting folks over to do an official visit to the bridge. So it's on their radar. Mike also mentioned this before, but we are also working to try to put pressure on FHWA to finalize that raised project funding money that you've been waiting for over a year now. And that's it from me. Let me know if anyone has any questions.
Hey, just a challenge for you guys setting up the September meeting. If at all possible, let's go across the Capitol once instead of 4 times a day.
I'll try
very
to
much appreciate it.
I'll try to make you run around less this time.
Maybe we can just get a scooter for Mike.
Wheelchair.
No problem.
Thank you, Ryan.
Let's see Mike on a 1 wheel.
Of course.
Get a bit exercise.
Okay, partner updates. Anything from FHWA? Any hands up? ODOT?
Oh, hey.
Oh, yeah.
Marty Pay, sorry. Took me a sec to find my unmuted. I'm not used to being on Zoom. I just wanted to clarify about going back to the conflict of interest meeting. Our concern was really between the board of the Bridge Authority and the Port Authority being largely the same people. And the concern came up when we were looking into right-of-way acquisition, and basically that the bridge is going to be buying a building from the port, and the potential conflicts that could come from writing a check to yourself. And so that's really the problem we're wanting addressed. And then we also suggested a conflict of interest plan to try to prevent something else from happening, just to be proactive. So that's
Martin,
really what we're talking about.
Martin, does that affect the fact that we're contracting with them for finance support, for example? Is that in any way seen as a problem?
It could potential. We didn't look past the right-of-way issue. And so that's why in the letter we sent, we suggested that you guys look into other conflicts, because we're not at this point planning to be actively digging into it, but we'd rather not surprise anybody if we do run into something. So.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no, Martin, we appreciate you bringing it up. Actually, we don't have a problem with you raising the issue. If we've got a challenge, we need to fix it.
Yeah. Like we're saying, it's just the perception that if the media were to get a hold of it, it could be framed in a bad light, and we're trying to keep everything very above board since we're in the public light.
I think it would be helpful on the policy. I mean, I've already recused myself on the negotiations between River County and the Bridge Authority on the loan for obvious reasons. And I'm sure you plan to recuse yourself by having a policy that says that states why you're doing it. This makes it all cleaner.
Yeah, not an issue there at all. And Martin, we appreciate your direct involvement in the whole process of setting up this whole system that we're looking at as far as obtaining the necessary land for the new bridge, et cetera. It's something new to me. It's kind of interesting to follow through.
It is. We're learning a lot too. We direct recipients are kind of new to federal highways. We're used to working through ODOT. We have programs we set up with them over years of partnership, and so building it, especially with the fast timeline, it's a lot for everybody. And so yeah, I'm glad we're able to work together closely to iron out these things.
Well, I look forward to getting this project finished soon and moving on to the next one.
Yeah.
I do have a question for Martin, actually. What time capsule have you been in that you're not used to using Zoom?
We use Teams. We use Zoom like right at the start of the pandemic, and then they moved us. So, the government, we do everything Microsoft. So we're on Teams. I spend all day on Teams, but not much with Zoom.
You sure don't look like you're left over from our administration or anything like that. So.
Okay, let's move on. How about Rob from ODOT? Do you have anything for us? No. Okay. Appreciate it. How about WashDOT? We had nobody from WashDOT is on. Okay, let's go to the consent agenda. Invoice approvals. So there's a number of invoices. Borrow your sheet there for a minute. It was in each of our packages. Is there any discussion that we need to have on any of these invoices? And I'm assuming that our finance group has looked at all of them.
Yep, we took a look at them yesterday.
Okay.
Yesterday? No.
Right.
It seems like yesterday.
And the
time's abstract.
And the E&C group looked at the HNT, the Kiewit invoices. And we're good with those as well. So any further discussion on the invoice on the consent? If not, could I have a motion?
To approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who's seconding it?
Okay, and Jake's got aye. Okay, so it's passed. Thank you. Committee reports. Funding and Finance, Grant.
I'm going to be brief and then Carrie can fill in any gaps. We spent most of our time talking about what was asked of us from the last meeting, talking about toll policy and addressing any possible residuals and answering questions that were asked of us with tolling policy regarding the possibilities of using residuals on the two options, low income and frequent travelers. So we'll get options back to you guys as soon as we can as to whether we can possibly move forward with either of those now or at some point in the future as to feasibility. And I need to take a little bit of a walk. So Carrie can answer some questions on things. Okay. I'm fine.
Carrie?
Well, I think relative to where we are on the discussion of toll policy, Grant covered it well. I had my 15 minutes, or shall I say 2 hours maybe, of fame with all of you at the last meeting, so I won't belabor all the things we talked about. But what you can expect to see here in the very near future from the Funding Finance Committee relative to toll policy is a very high level analysis, not in great detail, but and based on the findings from the planning level traffic and revenue study, a basic look at kind of the ballpark estimates of what the two types of discount programs that you mentioned might mean in terms of reduction in revenue. And then over time, we'll be refining that So that then we're going to move into an analysis of the traffic and revenue projections with no discount programs in place. And then by about November or December, we'll be ready to come back to you and say, you have a bottom bucket after all expenses and debt service, et cetera, are considered. You have a bottom bucket consisting of this much money. This is how much you can actually afford to do relative to a discount program. So there'll be two ways to look at it. One way to look at it, and we can give you a high level overview of that real soon, is what if we took those discount programs out of the top line? The analysis, which will come a little bit later, will be what if you did that out of the bottom bucket? What could you really afford to do? We think that's a safe approach relative to protecting your credit rating and answering the questions that need to be answered, and also keeping us on schedule to get this TNR work completed by January or February of next year. Was that clear?
Yeah, well, let me just ask a question. See, we always talk about it as a discount. And if you view it as a zero-sum thing, isn't another way to look at it that if we make certain decisions that certain people are going to pay less, then we have to fund it, and we will fund it by raising tolls across the board or in some other way? Why is it always talked about like we're just giving up revenue?
Well, so there are several ways to fund it. One is to accept the lower revenue, to give a discount to certain members of your population and accept the lower revenue, and that will have some impact on your financing capacity, right? It could potentially have an impact on your credit rating, but will have an impact on your financing capacity. Right. Another way to look at it is to say, at the end of the day, after all of our obligations are met, we have a certain amount of money left over. Can we apply that money to subsidize discounts? The third way to look at it is I think what you were talking about, and that is, if we wanted to do these discounts and the revenue reduction is too much, or there's not enough money in that bottom bucket, could we just raise the toll rates on those people who aren't getting discounts? And those are all the things that we will be in a position to hash out, as we get a little bit later in the process. I think we left you perhaps last week with the impression, or 2 weeks ago, with the impression that we're going to be able to give you those answers in the next month or two. And the answer is we're not going to be able to give you a detailed analysis of those things until a little bit later in the process.
Yeah, because I can see that. I think most people would not be happy to hear that their tolls are going up by 25% to pay for somebody else's toll. But if the tolls go up by half a penny, people are going to be probably very happy to hear that half a penny is going to have a tremendous effect on the folks in our community who can't afford the bridge. So, given the numbers we're talking about, the number of people who need assistance, the number of people who will be crossing the bridge normally, a normal day, I think I have trouble imagining that we wouldn't be able to find enough room to fund some very reasonable programs.
So Carrie, a question for you. I can't remember. You're assuming a $100 million TIFIA or a $70 million TIFIA?
Our financial plan right now really $70 million in TIFIA, but we are hoping to get approval for 105 million in capacity, and that's what our letter of interest to the Build America Bureau late last year outlined was 100. We're shooting for 105 million, and our initial credit rating, and I'm getting out of my depth here, and I would ask anybody from PFM to jump in if I say anything wrong, but our indicative credit rating that we were issued by the credit rating agency was based on that $105 million number.
Yep. Morning, folks, or afternoon, I should say. Yeah, you're exactly right, Carrie. We received the investment grade ratings, which we've gone back and spoken about. We've cited numerous times at the $105 million level, and we submitted that investment grade rating with the application or the letter of interest to TIFIA, and all of that's based on the planning level study, a $105 million loan, and that got us to BBB minus.
So to me, we've got a couple of moving parts here.
There's a lot of moving parts, more than a couple.
Yeah, to me, one of the key ones is, what's this bridge really going to cost?
Right.
And off of that, are we going to have to use all 105 million of the TIFIA loan, which means we've got a lot more pressure on tolls? Or can we find and keep the cost down, find more grants to help pay for this thing, and hopefully take a TIFIA loan, finally use 70 or 80 million dollars of TIFIA, which gives us a lot more room to do something with tolls.
We've always said that the more money that we can find externally, the lower the loan's going to be and the less the toll burden would be for the community. And
yeah,
that's obviously true.
Yeah.
Carrie, what's the new time? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna try to hone in on, I know you said it's gonna take a bit longer than the last time we convened and gave those different options we want to explore. What's your new estimate on a timeline when we'll be seeing those?
So the order, and I would ask Tim, because he's the guy that's going to have to follow whatever we say. But we had talked last week about being able to give you a pretty decent analysis of all of this by October. And what we're going to be able to give you in the next month or so is a high level overview of the potential revenue impacts of just some examples of what you might do in terms of a low income discount program and in terms of a frequent user discount programs, without a whole lot of analysis of all the different levers that you can pull to make, micro adjustments there. Then go ahead.
I was just going to ask, is that beneficial? It seems like it would be, I feel like that can unintentionally bias then our perceptions when we have the full picture to evaluate. Would we not just want to have all of that information at the time that you've done the full evaluation of the programs we're actually considering and the implications for funding and loss?
I think that's up to you. I think that there was some concern that we had promised and you had asked for some analysis early on in the process, kind of an order of magnitude, or I think the exact words were back of envelope. I don't like back of envelope very much. We're willing to do it, but I would prefer, and I think the team would prefer, then to move into the November timeframe to be able to give you a more thorough analysis. Am I right? I want to make sure, and because I don't have this in front of me. I wasn't expecting to do this. Tim, am I right though? October-ish?
Well, so what we're looking to do is, apologize, hopefully y'all can hear me. What we're looking to do is establish the baseline based on the toll rates that exist today, plus some basic increase going forward, like when the new bridge opens and that in the new modeling. And the new modeling won't be available until November. So what we want to do is establish that baseline, come back to you with those numbers, and like both Peter and Carrie have talked about, what does that look like? What does the bottom bucket look like? And then say, okay, we want to test, a higher toll rate, or we want to test a higher toll rate with a discount scenario like this. That's the time frame. We'll get into that in December and January. I believe the current schedule shows like a selection of final scenario going into the whole financing process in the February timeframe. But I think
you're right, Tim.
Peter has a firmer grasp on when exactly that happens. So I hope that answers your question.
If I could jump in on this, what I understood is that the fear was that we were kind of stumbling into or backing into a situation where everything was built upon a certain set of assumptions, and therefore it would be impossible for us to consider anything else. So we had the last meeting where we communicated the sorts of things that we're thinking about and interested in, so that Tim understands it and Carrie understands it. So I feel like we made that communication, and now we're comfortable moving forward, and we will have a decision point later, but you understand the sorts of freedoms that we're looking for, and we understand that at the end of the day, the numbers have to work, and we're committed to making the numbers work. So if making the numbers work means if you're reducing toll here, you're increasing toll there, we get that, and you're going to tell us how to do that, what possibilities we have to do that. So I think we're good.
Thank you. And I think our team is comfortable with that clarification. And so we'll move forward accordingly. And quite frankly, as we talked last week, we were talking in kind of broad terms about a schedule. I just want to let you know too, as Commissioner Fox alluded to earlier in the conversation, we are working right now on a pretty detailed monthly schedule of the TNR process that takes us out through March or April when you have a final TNR report in your hand.
Good. Okay, let's close this one off. We're going to give you a reprieve. You're not feeling well.
I'm fine. Oh yeah, I've dealt with this for years and years, so I'm fine.
Is there anything else you want to mention on the?
We're gonna start meeting up every 2 weeks. So a lot more regularly, a lot more is coming up. Next meeting, we got the cash flow stuff is deeper next one, so you'll get a whole lot more update and that deeper on that one with an update on that next time.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Eric, you're going to brief us on the engineering construction.
Sure. I think Mike got a bunch of it, so I'll just kind of mention those. We talked about the NEPA process, and that's kind of slowed us up a little bit, as has the progress on the MOAs that Mike talked about. We did spend some time starting to look at some of the decisions as Kiewit is trying to refine the criteria. Suicide prevention, we talked about lighting and the roadway section. Suicide prevention, we've asked the design team to move forward with an accommodation for future fencing if that becomes necessary, or if we decide to move that way. Lighting, there was kind of a recommendation to go with poles. And we questioned that because it's not consistent with the BAC. So we asked them to go back and be consistent with that and look at some lower level lighting. And then we did talk about the roadway section a little bit and how we've divided that up and what that means. I don't think we had any final decisions on that, but it seemed to kind of illustrate that we have a travel lane and we have the pedestrian lane. And by the time we start taking all the barriers out, it's a significant amount of the percentage. So that is still ongoing. And then we did have a discussion about design speed for the bridge. So a speed that the actual roadway is designed to carry vehicles at a certain speed, and then we would assign a speed in the future. So the threshold, what we understand where some additional requirements come in is above 45 miles an hour. So we use 45 as the design speed.
Not going near that.
Nobody's suggesting that we travel that fast.
When you do roadway design, you've got your design speed that your criteria and your road is designed to, and you have your posted speed, which is typically 10 miles an hour less than your design speed. It can be more, but typically it's 10.
So we decided 45 was a good design speed to work with, and we deferred the posted speed to the future. I think,
and part of that's because it's got to go through a state process and determine the posted.
I think one of the things that I'll just point out.
Oh, yeah, that is a good question, though. Who will set the speed?
We will.
Yeah, I was about to say, it'll be the authority.
Yeah, but you got to be in line with state approaches to how you set that. So.
Yeah, the key for us is
in Oregon, since we were founded in Oregon or Washington.
We're hoping to give it to Oregon, right? So
yeah,
and we're doing both.
Okay.
TBD.
Well, the roundabout makes it a little easier on the Washington side. On the Oregon side, we're going to have a signal, which could back you up on the bridge. That's you don't want a 55-mile-an-hour zone.
Yeah, and you're coming down into
well, just safety too.
Yeah.
There's really a short section where you're actually going to be up to speed because you're going to be coming down to 15 at the roundabout and potentially 0 at the signal. So
yeah,
there's transition for both of those. So you got a short piece in the middle of the bridge that's really controlled by the design criteria. So.
Eric, I didn't understand what you're talking about. Removal of barriers. What were you?
Well, so vehicular barriers, they do take space. So our bridge overall width is 56 feet. And you start taking a vehicle barrier off of each side, one in between, and all of a sudden you're down 6 feet. So I think that was, I don't think anybody realized it, understood that everybody understood they took space, but I think that it starts to become a significant percentage of the deck.
So what we're talking about is the 3 barriers. Right now, we have the west of the east side, you have a 4-foot, 2 12-foot lanes, another 4-foot, a barrier, roughly 2 5-foot bicycle lanes, and the balance for pedestrian, which is 8 foot, 12, 8 foot, something like that. So the question on the table is the 2 5-foot lanes sufficient for traffic on bicycles?
It's 2 5 feet with a 2-foot shot distance to the barrier. And also because you've got inlets there, so it shifts them over 2 feet to get them off the barrier.
So that's what's getting kicked around a little bit.
Site distances.
Yeah. That's what we'll take to the public too.
Right.
You know, where we started from the NEPA. One option is that typical we just laid out. There could be other options. I'm sure everybody will have different opinions on how to divide that space. Right.
I just saw a thing on the interstate bridge in Portland, how I think the entire pedestrian bike lane is 4 foot wide or something. It's just incredibly narrow and tight. It's just crazy how,
Oh, wow.
it's like right up against the traffic and it heavy roar of trucks as you're on it. It's just horrible.
It's like the bridge there out east of the airport. That
Oh, the
lane is
Jackson.
miserable.
Yeah.
So the other thing we're talking about is the west side guardrail.
So, yeah, okay.
Okay. So if you think about the bicycle path and a 8-foot pedestrian,
Right.
if there's wrecks on the right-hand side or east side, and you got to get a emergency vehicle up.
Right.
We've been thinking you use the bicycle path and part of the pedestrian, shut that down and let them rip.
Right.
Once you do that, that kind of forces you into beefing up that pedestrian guardrail area, because you don't want this thing sliding off and going off into the water.
Right, but it is only for emergency vehicles, right?
For emergency vehicles.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
So we're working through that. We want something that's going to be a nice looking bridge.
Right.
But it's got to be functional as well.
Right. There was also discussion about whether the barrier between the pedestrian and between the ped bike and the west lane is movable or reconfigurable or anything like that.
That's a potential. It's expensive.
Sure.
To do that.
Yeah. But you can design so that that's something that can be done in the future also.
Good.
I guess these movable things probably take up more space than the immovable ones.
I'm still kind of getting in my head. At some point, you got a bridge, you only need 2 vehicle restraint barriers. By definition, it's a bridge, it's got vehicles, you only need 2.
Not if you put vehicles on the other side of the barrier.
Well, then maybe there isn't a vehicle barrier between the bikes and the
Can't do that.
vehicles. Put a curb in.
It doesn't stop traffic from hitting a bike.
Well, but bikes are driving on roads all the time.
That is, you absolutely can do it. Yes. That's the authority profile y'all want to take. Yes.
What I'm trying to illustrate is we got to go through all those options before we can make a informed decision about. I mean, because there's an easy way to do it, and you just use all prescribed things, but that's not going to give us the bridge that this community's asked for. That's my big concern.
My big concern is safety. And I think we all share that. We don't want to mix bicycles with fruit trucks. Fruit trucks is going to win in that fight. But we got to figure out how to make it where it's a functional bridge. It's a nice looking bridge, and 90% of the people are happy.
So a while back when we started talking about lighting, Mike, you had mentioned you've done some research and said that more and more communities were coming to the idea that less lighting was, that lighting wasn't necessary for every bridge in every circumstance. So have they done more research on that? Do you have any answers on?
Right now,
Do we need to have lighting for
right now, the designers are
vehicles?
saying yes, that there needs to be lighting for the vehicles.
Or is it just at the two ends?
I'm still pushing back that I want to see in why.
Right.
Because I still don't know that, I haven't seen in writing the requirements that say that it has to be lit the whole way across, other than for the pedestrian side.
Right, that's a different issue.
But right now, the designers have said, yes, there needs to be lighting on the vehicle side as well.
Pedestrians don't carry lights with them, all motor vehicles do. I understand that at night on a foggy, rainy, wet night, it might become difficult to find where the lane is. And that's where I would hope that you would look at things like variable speed limits, where you reduce the speed limits at night.
That
Things that.
It's easy to say to do that. It's harder to have a variable speed limit, but yes.
You can post variable speed limits all over the place.
Well, you can, enforcing people to do it is whole thing.
Enforcing is a different issue, but if someone is speeding, then they're speeding. If something happens, then they're taking that risk.
Having a variable speed sign and somebody managing when to turn that on and off means you've got somebody managing when to turn that
Right,
on.
which I believe that we understand that technology.
Yes. Well, it's not, the technology's there. Yes, you can do it.
Right.
Having a management center that can control it and turn it on and off is
I mean,
different.
between day and night?
Yes. Well, between foggy conditions.
Well, I'm just saying every night you turn it down, right? We have nighttime speed limit, daytime speed limit. There are places that do that.
You could, yes.
Let's chair that one.
Okay.
I
I just wanted to make sure that the questions were being asked, which Mike said he is asking. About, is it actually required that we light the roadway?
Yeah. Right now, they're saying yes. I am still asking the question why, because there's a lot of interstates that have light in between interchanges.
Right.
And we've actually gone away from lights.
Right.
They said bridges are different.
Have we found examples?
I'm asking why.
Okay.
Yes.
The one that comes to my mind, this bridge is gonna be from the gorge, pretty high up. Don't we have to have aviation lighting on?
It depends on if you're in a flight corridor. I don't think we are. If you're in a
The plane tankers don't
I
count.
need to ask Jake if he's
I
gonna
don't
be
think
flying
we're
at night.
Towers before, right?
Yeah.
Your bridge had towers.
And there's lights up there.
Yes, there are.
Okay, something to check on.
I think that those were the big items. Catherine, was there anything else that I missed?
The only thing I would add is we did have quite a lengthy discussion about our invoicing process. And so when we bring invoices to the actual board, like let's just say for Kiewit, we ask them to have a cover sheet. So now we'll have people signing saying they reviewed and they suggest to move forward, and then it goes to our committee and then it goes to finance. So by the time it comes to the board for review, it's been looked at by at least 6 different board members plus the HNTB staff. So that was everything that Eric said, as well as the utility discussion. That was eye-opening as to how many utilities and the transfer stations are going to have to create. And special thanks to both Clickitat County and White Salmon sending their people there. It was great to have all those stakeholders in the same place at the same time. And they actually were really aware and positive as to how far along this bridge has gotten. Given what they didn't know about or what they're reading about, they were really proud of all the work that we're having. So I think it was a really great meeting. And then everything else everybody else said, ditto.
Thank you, Catherine. Let's go to governance administration. Do you have any?
Really fast meeting, and I don't think there's anything that this board needs to hear about.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we met for 15 minutes.
And communication is next time.
Strike through.
By the way, welcome back.
Thanks.
We watched you. I didn't see your name. I was looking for it.
It was.
Was it up there?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Oh, I put my TV hat back on and helped with the Olympics coverage.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
Cool.
You were in Connecticut?
Yep. Yeah.
Good Olympics
Most of
are
the-
Paris, you know.
I feel like I was in Paris. I looked at Paris for a lot of time. Yeah.
I was looking for a plug for the Hood River White Salmon Bridge, but I didn't see it.
I tried to get a few. we did some shout outs during some of the canoe slalom for the Northwest, and I was pushing for some sort of white salmon river, but we didn't get there.
I like how you put a bridge into your logo there.
Oh, yes.
Okay, let's go unfinished business.
This is just carry on from last meeting, and I'm gonna turn, is Mark still on? Yes.
I am here.
So I think there was two questions, Mark, one about county approval need, and then there was another question that came up about who signs an amendment to the CFA.
Oh, thanks. And I apologize for that last meeting. I was dialed in and I just couldn't get unmuted for some reason. The CFA can be amended by just this board for limited purposes. And this amendment is within those limited purposes. So there's no need to go back to the organizing jurisdictions for approval or additional signature. Normally we wouldn't restate the document. In other words, we wouldn't print it out again, incorporating all of the amendments we've made to date. And we don't have to do that. But the reason that we did in this case was because we're trying to convey to our funders that we have a limited purpose and that the vast majority of expenditures that the agency makes are for that limited purpose, which is to get a bridge built. And so there's not ongoing agency expenses that it takes on simply to perpetuate its existence that are otherwise in service of getting the bridge built and replaced. So that's why we kind of wanted to amend it and restate it and put it in one package so that we can show that to funders and say, you know, here's our charter, here's our organizational document, without having them see all the sausage that went into its current status.
Okay.
Less sausage.
Less sausage. New technical term for our organization.
Reduce our sausage.
Okay, so do we need to have a motion on this?
Yes.
Yes.
And one question, I don't have it in front of me. Who signs off on this? I thought there was a
Chair. Chair.
Yeah, this is the one I thought. So on the attest, it says Secretary Board of Directors. We don't have a secretary named. So that should be the co-chair?
Yeah, if you want me to revise that, then I can arrange that. That's what we call it. I thought I had changed over all the format of your resolution so that they say first co-chair and second co-chair. But if it doesn't, then I will revise that and get that to you for signature.
Okay, and on this document, it still says Board of Directors instead of Commissioners.
It's changed.
And you got Board of Directors, first co-chair,
So
secretary.
So let me check and see which document you're referring to. When we change versions. So yeah, so
There's the old one in there.
Ours has
Yeah.
the updated version in the packet.
So here's the regarding your
version in the packet.
Yeah, regarding your CFA.
Well, that shows edits. Where's the final version of it?
Get the final version. I thought this was the final version.
Yeah. So Art, could you take a look at that, and we'll go ahead and take the vote, but if you need to adjust the words as far as who's signing, we should do that.
Yeah, so just to clarify, you've amended the CFA twice. One was to change your name from a board of directors to a board of commissioners. So the resolution that did that, of course, says board of directors, but now you're switching over to board of commissioners. The second is to limit your purpose, and that resolution should refer to you as a board of commissioners, but I'll get that worked out.
Yeah, right now it's still showing directors.
It was a sequence issue.
Yeah.
I think we changed the first one. We were directors.
Yeah.
Should we take a motion and to pass this with those changes?
I move that we pass the amended restated commission formation agreement. as stated with clarifications as required.
It's 2024-11.
Yeah. Resolution 2024-11.
2024-11.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and Jake?
Hopefully not bad.
He was
Okay.
sending the video while he was flying.
I don't believe we need them though, right?
I think
Have
we've been-
We've been there also.
New business.
First was this record retention policy. If there's any questions.
Yeah, there is one question on that for you. When I looked at it, drawings, as-built drawings of the project, the retention period shows 3 years. Why isn't that indefinite? We want to have a formal record.
I think that's minimum requirement of 3 years legally.
So 3 years after the project is fully paid off, that's the minimum period we have to retain those documents.
That doesn't mean that we as an organization don't want them forever because we have to maintain the bridge, so we want the as-built.
That's just the legal minimum requirement.
Okay,
I have a question just on the, oh, sorry. Did you-
go ahead.
The terms, the document control specialist, who is that now? I think more I'm interested in understanding as we get out of contracting with someone like HRWSBA. Are we setting ourselves up to be having a manageable system based on whatever staff we anticipate having in the future and just what that,
Right now,
how that was factored into what's being proposed?
right now it's Kelly. And then in the future, you all will need to determine whose role that rolls up under, or if it's a designated person. We tried to do it by position so that you could, it's not a person. You could just say these responsibilities belong to the executive director at some point in the future. We were trying to make them stand like test of time, not be specific to the project.
So Marla, this is not a agency policy, this is a project policy. So we wrote this as a to apply to this project. So beyond this project, it has to be revised to adopt this.
So that's a good point, though. It does raise the agency question, like just what are the retention rules we're held to as an operating government entity? Like, are these all meeting at least that level? I'm not as familiar with Oregon as I am with Washington, but a lot of our stuff is 7 years and some of these things certainly aren't even getting.
It's a combination of state and both states and federal.
Okay.
Right.
And you took the worst of each, right?
Right,
Yeah.
whichever is the most stringent or longer.
I guess worse, it's not.
Between Oregon and US?
And FHRWSBA has their guidance.
Okay.
How long it has to take, and then the FAR and I don't know, code of.
I think there's an operational issue that down the road we're going to have to face.
Yeah.
And that is what kind of administrative organization are we going to set up? And how are we going to transfer a lot of this information in a format that we can readily use for the next 50 years?
Yeah, that's kind of where my head goes. And it helps to clarify that we're talking here about the project itself, but just what infrastructure we're building that maybe is going to encumber us when we see a much more reduced staffing capacity that we're paying for, and things like a share, like just determining what systems we need to maintain or use, and what of this we're archiving and having a strong digital record established that is indefinite.
So some of what we're setting up is stuff that'll, you can take on, like, right, the SharePoint will be all forever living. We can give you a document on here's the.
Yeah, but those only work when they're maintained, and that requires people, and speaking for a small city, this would encumber my town right now. So thinking that we will eventually be an authority that is staffed by a handful of individuals, thinking about how we right size some of the systems that are being put in place where there is all this capacity, and we're going to become something that looks a lot different.
But this is a good reminder of why it doesn't make sense for an entity like this to own and manage a bridge.
Yeah.
Right, states have ways of doing this.
Yeah.
This is a silliness which we are living with for now.
Yeah.
And we should all work to fix this, perhaps in another role.
Gee, what is that?
We tried to not constrain the agency to softwares or like SharePoint's
Yeah.
about the cheapest way you can do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've tried to use as cheap and non-proprietary stuff as we can.
It's probably too early now, but there's also some way of, as you start to back out, is, what's the
Final set.
5-page thing, 5-page big ideas of how we ended up here after 6 years.
Yep. No, that'll be part of your closeout plan. When you get to phase 2 would be to close out the transfer of everything to the agency. So that you have all the electronic files, the digital files, everything.
Okay, let's keep moving on, guys. The next new business.
We need a motion.
We need a
Should
motion.
we adopt this?
We had a motion, we didn't vote on it, right?
No, we have not. Move we adopt the attached record retention policy, policy.
2024-12.
Yep.
We had a motion in a second, you just need to go.
Okay, call for a vote.
It's not 2020-12.
Yeah, this is.
All in favor?
That's the
I don't think
second.
this has a resolution. It's just adopting the project records retention policy.
just adopting
Yes.
You skip ahead.
Get back.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, okay, it's passed. Go to the next one, which is OTIB, which is what, Oregon Transportation Infrastructure Board loan. Resolution 2024-12. That talks about, I believe it was a $10 million, $10 million loan.
Yep.
That we could use to bridge part of our cash flow issues.
Correct.
And if I remember right, it was about 3.7% interest rate.
3.75.
I didn't see am I missing
The 1 year.
the
I was wondering about that.
actual resolution that accompanies this, like the whereas and therefores? It just
There was-
memorializes why we're adopting this agreement.
We didn't have any kind of resolution. It's just a motion for adoption to allow the execution. It wasn't a resolution, motion or resolution.
Do we not need a resolution in Oregon?
You don't have to have a resolution. You can go by motions.
The resolution is a memorialization of a.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, on this one, I just had a question about the maturity date.
That was what the OIB gave us. So we have to pay it back by September of 2025. So this is our last source of funding that we should try to minimize the use of.
Yep.
The intent is to pay it back as soon as we get the Oregon 20 million.
Yep.
This is a very short term.
Formalizing that.
Yep.
So everybody's on the same page.
Good point.
It's a vocalizing?
Realizing that we are paying this money back by September 1st, 2025.
So it's
That's the maturity date of this loan.
So it's a last resort to spend it and a first to pay it off.
But we have to have it because we don't have
To get the
anything else until we get the Oregon money or the info money.
It is a very short-term debt instrument.
Yes.
And I have
Mark, wait, Mark's got a question.
Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
So I did draft a resolution authorizing this. I'm not sure, maybe it didn't go in the hopper. And I would prefer that you adopt a formal resolution. If you want to just go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, there is. It's
24.
after. It's in the packet after it. Be 24-12. Sorry.
Yeah, 24-12.
Was right after. So,
Anybody?
I'm just getting there.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Let's see. There we go. I see it now.
They're coming up to my.
Okay, there should be.
It's page 129 in the package.
Oh.
It's the page.
129.
So this basically, the whereas clauses summarize your authority to borrow the money. And then some of the specifics of the loan agreement were that you affirmatively pledge all of your lawfully available funds, which obviously are quite limited at this point. But remember that in your intergovernmental agreement with the port, you have reserved the right to encumber the trust account that was set up. And that's essentially what they're looking at in terms of your lawfully available funds, as well as the proceeds of the lottery bonds, which is really the intended source of repayment of this interim credit facility.
So I guess we didn't make a motion yet. So I can make a motion. I'd move that we approve resolution 2024-12 as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay,
You okay, Jake?
Very gravelly.
resolution passed.
Falling down an iceberg.
Thank you.
Must be that bridge.
Okay, the next one is September 9th board meeting. It looks like both Jake and myself will be in DC and Marla as well. So we need alternate for co-chairs.
Or we could just move the date.
We could.
You could, you still will have some things that you will need to do that through some type of special session or public announced way, because you will have invoices that need.
Oh, is it time sensitive?
Yeah, there's some time sensitive stuff.
So I would suggest we keep it as it is and keep moving, because the next 4 weeks, we're going to be having more pressure on the schedule going to Olympia and
Figure out how to
Salem.
do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Preference would be that.
You want to try and do it on the previous Friday?
No,
We can keep
the date. I'm confused because I've got a potential conflict on my schedule, but I think it was fixed. So I think I'm good.
It's just chairing it, so whoever's here can chair it.
Yeah, I'm fine, Chair.
I'm not going to chair it. I've chaired it. Wants to can chair it.
The co-chairs have to assign a chair and co-chair.
So the board can do so.
I think
the board can have a meeting and we can decide who's going to share out the meeting.
Yeah. They can just start the meeting that way.
Well, the Washington rep will be running the meeting.
Washington rep?
Right, because Jake is the first chair.
Right.
He won't be here.
But if he's
I know, but so whoever's going to replace him from Washington will chair the meeting.
I don't think it has to work that way.
No, yeah, I think the present voting commissioners at that meeting could take a vote and a majority would then designate that sub.
Well, let me ask it a different way then. Who wants to chair the meeting on the?
What do we see?
On the ninth.
So I don't think it's your problem. I don't think you have to worry about it.
We don't have anything in the charter about this, I don't believe.
So this is the difference between project managers.
Yeah.
And
authority.
I will sleep much better if I know somebody's going to take it.
It's not.
We got it handled.
We can
Sleep
do
well.
it. We can do it.
Okay.
That's what you wanted, right?
We're gonna have cake while you're gone.
Okay. Page, informational items.
Informational items, we included the top 10 risk items in the packet. If you've got any questions, we can talk about those. The Hood River County loan, Mark, do you want to give an update on the latest discussions you've had with Hood River County?
I have not had any conversations with Hood River County other than they said that they would be, so we did have this a couple weeks ago, we had an initial call with their bond counsel. We sent them our proposed form of loan agreement, which, is essentially the same as the type that we had with the port. And then we haven't heard anything. So I probably need to reach out and poke them. We just haven't heard back from them after we provided them with a form of loan agreement and a form of authorizing resolution.
Please do. Right, so you're gonna follow up with them?
I'll follow up with their bond counsel.
Recognize that our Board of Commissioners meets just once a month. We can call a special meeting, but our meeting is coming Monday.
Yeah.
So I sort of expected it would be in this Monday's agenda, but I haven't seen the agenda yet. Sounds like that won't be the case.
Okay, let's keep moving. Financial report.
I'm sorry, who's following up on that?
Mark. Yeah, Mark.
I'll reach out to their bond counsel and just find out where they are in responding to documents that we provided them. It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah, our lawyer I'm talking with their lawyer about finishing that up.
Right.
Okay, everybody saw the financial report. Debbie, on our toll revenue.
Sorry, I I feel like Marty Fay from Federal Highways, because I don't use them very often either. Yeah, so it's a pretty straightforward report. We are still coming in lower than our than expectations, and so but obviously we've had a lot of reasons why. So it's still early on in the process. I'm going to get back with PFM and talk a little bit about what our numbers were, because we were forecasting to come in quite a bit higher than what we were going to need just to fund the reserve for the TIFIA loan. So I do want to check up on that and see where we feel like we're going to land now. Again, we're not even through one year yet. And so I'm not overly concerned about it, because we had a lot of cushion in there. So again, not overly concerned about it. The LGIP continues to return about 5.3%. I think it's down to 5.27, but still good return that we're getting on the LGIP. So beyond that, we're just kind of waiting to finalize these loans so that we can start to get some money flowing through. You're still, the money that's being spent on the project right now continues to be basically finishing up grants and appropriations that were in the name of the Port of Hood River. And so we're comfortable, obviously, spending Port of Hood River cash, because we're going to get reimbursed on the Port of Hood River side. But that's going to run out very soon, as you guys have been talking about with the pinch points. So we need to get these loans wrapped up so that we have money flowing to get these invoices paid, probably in the next, as you say, the next month or so. We're really going to have to get this wrapped up. So,
hey, Debbie, the recent bridge shutdown, the port's filing an insurance claim for not only the cost of repair, but loss of tolling.
yes.
And if the port can collect that, a chunk of that will go back into this account, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we're asking for full reimbursement. So that includes the additional toll revenue as part of the full reimbursement.
Debbie, in rough terms, what percentage of the expected revenue have we seen in those? How much you talk about we're under what we expected, but is it by ballpark? What percentage?
20% below expectation.
Okay.
That sounds about right. I haven't done the math on it, so I didn't know off the top of my head, but leave it to Grant to do the math.
Off the top.
79.6% last month.
We're talking over 1 month.
The last month, yeah.
Okay, but over the period that we've been doing this since July 1st, whatever it is.
I can go through and wait.
It's in that.
Yeah.
remember
June was 73.5%. May was 83.1%. April was 87.1%.
We've lost a week just about every month for some reason.
Okay, no, that's great. No, that's what I need to hear. I was assuming that you were going to say something like 5%.
Curious anecdotally to see the data on like the Dallas Port Bridge or the Dallas Bridge.
In terms of traffic volume,
There's like a trend. Like, do we see a habit change?
Yeah.
Not of all of those, but even if it's like 3 or 5%, is there a consistency where they're saying that channel increase, or they're saying
all the bridges closed, yes.
Yeah, but even this, I mean, I think there are some, a handful, which I'm sure is part of all of our calculations and data, just the people that will actually choose because of that increase.
Who chose versus it was shut down for a week and they had to.
Right.
But that trend over time is interesting, that we don't seem to be hitting at what our projection originally was of what 100% traffic is.
Yeah, I know that, so the, parking data is also down in Hood River, I believe, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think it's more, well, I mean, they could be related, but it also could just be that the tourism this year hasn't been as good as people expected.
Volume overall is down.
Just.
Okay, we're coming to a close here, guys.
Oh, I had one note, just informational update. The date for El Grito is, just to update that, it's actually Sunday, the 15th. It says Tuesday the 17th, but if all the commissioners, I know there's been a call out for requests of people that are able to help at some of these events. So I want to make sure you have the right date if you're looking at your calendar.
Okay, so my offer to you is if you see that you're light on any of them, let me know and I'll make myself available.
Great.
I'll be at First Friday.
Okay, upcoming items, anything to brief, Mike?
No, listen,
Okay,
I'll do it there.
we got a raise grant scope review, sometime in the future.
Yep.
Okay. Any other items?
That presentation's well marinated.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
We're gonna use it on the next bridge.
Let's go around the room. Anybody have any other items they want to bring up? Okay, out on Zoom land. Anybody?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good take.
Okay, if not, I will consider the meeting closed. Thank you all for participating. We'll see you next time.
You sounded like you weren't sure.